Day 319 of doing a LeetCode problem every day until I get a job. All right, y'all, we're back again another day, another LeetCode problem where we're doing daily LeetCode problems. And today we have question number 284, peaking iterator. The difficulty level is medium, but don't worry because we're going to keep the solution as simple and easy to understand as possible. But before we get started, y'all, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you need any new Apple AirPods, go in and check out that link in the description so you can get you some. Now let's see what the question says. Design an iterator that supports the peak operation of an existing iterator in addition to the has next and the next operations. Implement the Implement the peaking iterator class. Peaking iterator initializes the object with the given integer iterator. Next returns the next element in the array and moves the pointer to the next element. Has next returns true if there are still elements in the array, and peak returns the next element in the array without moving the pointer. Note, each language may have different implementation of the constructor and iterator, but they all support the next and has next functions. So let's go ahead and take a look at these examples because that can seem a little confusing just by reading the question, but hence the name. They want us to create a class that allows us to peek at the next element without moving the iterator, and they also want us to create functions that move the iterator and create a function that returns a boolean true or false if there are any more elements in the array. But let's go ahead and take a look at example 1 so we can make sure that we're doing this question correctly. So the input is an array. It has an array of strings and an array of it's a 2D array of strings and an array of integers, right? So let's go ahead and copy and paste this over here so we can work through it. We could put this right here as we go through it, and then we could put this down here. This is a 2D array as well. We could put this right here, boom, and then this is the output, so we could put the output over here as well so we can cross each out as we move along, boom, and see what's going on. So hold on, let me put this, let me just put input right here, then we could just, sorry y'all, move this down for y'all, clean that up real nice, boom, then we could put output right there, boom. So first thing we're doing is we're calling this peaking iterator, right? Just initializing a class. So boom, we call that, we could get rid of this. Boom, no, that's why it's a null right here. Next, after that, we are calling the next function. So the next function returns the next element in the array and moves the pointer to the next element. So since this is the first element, the next function is going to return 1 after we call it. So boom, call the next function, the output, we call the next function. This is the array, so this is the array we're looking at. So the next function just to start will be 1 because it's the first element that we see when we call the function or after we initialize this class. So we call the next function, the pointer moves the 1. So we have, let's see right here, or let's look at the explanation. It says boom, new peaking iterator class, boom. Then we call the next function right here and we return 1. Boom, that's where this 1 comes from. And the pointer moves to the next element. Okay, so we call the next function, boom, we return the 1, and then we move the pointer here to the next function. So we get rid of, to the next element. So we get rid of this. That's where the 1 comes from. Boom. Then now we want to call peak. So what peak is going to do is peak is going to return the next element, which is 2. That's why it's a 2 right here. And but it's not going to move the pointer. So we didn't move the pointer yet. We have to call next to move the pointer. So right now the pointer's on 2, and we want to be able to peek at the 2 without moving the pointer. So we call peak, the element is 2, so we return 2 right here. Boom. Then, so we can get rid of this. But we could leave the 1 in there. We're still on 2. But now we call the next function. Boom. So we already handled this with the next and peek. Now we call the next function again, and that's going to move the pointer. So we're going to return the 2, boom, and we're going to move the pointer to 3 right here. So let's see. Right here, we call peeking, or that's what we call peek. We return 2, the pointer does not move. Then we call next. We call next, we return the 2, and the pointer moves to the next element. So now the pointer's at 3. So we called next, 2, we return the 2 and move the pointer. Boom. So now we can get rid of both of those. We can get rid of this as well. Boom. So now we call next again. The pointer's already on 3. We call next again. So boom, we return the 3. That's where the 3 comes from. But since we called next, the pointer moves. So right here, peeking iterator next, we return 3, but the pointer moves to the next element. Boom. As you can see, there are no next elements. So when we call the hasNext function, which is going to return a Boolean or returns true if there are still elements in the array, since we already called next right here and moved past the 3, so we called next, boom, we're past the 3. So now we call hasNext, and there's nothing right there. There's no other elements. We already iterated through the whole array, so we could return false because there are no other elements in the array. Let me see if that right. So there's no other elements in the array. So when we call hasNext, we return false. So that's how the question works, y'all. I hope that makes sense to y'all. But hence the name. We just want to when we call the next function, we're gonna return the element and move to the next element. When we call the peek function, we're going to return the element. When we call the next function, we're going to return the element and move to the next element. When we call the peek function, we're going to return the element, but we're not going to move to the next element. We're just going to peek at that element without moving the iterator, or without moving the pointer. And then when we call the hasNext function, if there are still elements in the array, then we'll return true. But if there's no more elements in the array and there's no next element, then we return false. So I hope that makes sense to y'all. Let's get into the fun part now that we're done with the examples. So hopefully, with this solution, get into the fun part, the solution. Hopefully this solution will help y'all to better understand what's going on and what the functions are really asking or want us to do. So the first thing we need to do is we need to create an iterator to traverse through the array elements. So in order to do that, we could just say private var iterator colon, and this is going to be an indexing. So we can say indexing iterator. Then open up the less than bracket. We're going to say array. Then we're going to say open up the less than again. There's going to be integer inside, and we're going to put 2 greater thans like that, just like it is here. Boom. We're going to put that up here. Boom. Now we need to create something that stores the next element in advance to allow peeking. So in order to do that, we could just come right here and we could say private. Let me clean this up for y'all. Sorry, y'all. So this is gonna this is where we're gonna store the next element to allow the peeking. We're gonna say private var last value. Then we're gonna say colon, and it's gonna be an integer. Put a question mark right there. Now we need to initialize the iterator with an array iterator and prefetch the first value. So in order to do that, we could just come right here. We could say self dot iterator equals r, which comes from right here. Boom. Then we could come right here and we could say self dot last value equals iterator dot next. Excuse me, y'all. And this is going to preload the first element for us. Now we need to create the function that's going to return the current element and advance the iterator. So in order to do that, we could use our next function. We could say let previous equal last value, and that's going to store the current value. Then we could say last value equals iterator dot next, put some parentheses at the end of that, and that's going to move to the next element. Then we could come right here and we could say return previous, and then we, since it's optional, we could put question mark 0 for our default value. Now we need to create the function that's going to return the next element without advancing the iterator, or allow us to peek at the element. So in order to do that, we could just say return last value, and that's going to be optional as well. So we can say question mark 0. And then the last but certainly not least, we need to create this has next function. So in order to do that, we need to check if there are more elements left in the iterator. So we could just say return last value exclamation point equals nil. So if it equals nil, or excuse me, this is going to return a Boolean. So if the last value is not nil, then that means there are more elements in the array. So that should be all she wrote, y'all. Told you the solution was not that difficult at all. So let's go ahead and run it. Make sure it runs like it's supposed to. Oh, we got an error because we got to put some parentheses right here. Boom. So now let's run it again, see if it works this time. And it's accepted, y'all. So let's go ahead and submit it. Make sure it stays accepted after we submit it. Let's see. Ooh, going kind of slow. But it's going, and it's accepted, y'all. 9 milliseconds beats 15.38% of users with Swift. Those numbers could be better, y'all, but don't worry. We'll get those numbers up as we continue down our LeetCode journey. Right now, we just want to be able to solve the problem that is presented to us, and I feel like this is a good, simple, easy to understand solution so that we can take this knowledge that we learn from this solution and include that knowledge in future solutions when we're solving them. So with that being said, y'all, before we leave, make sure you get one more look at the code. Read it, learn it, love it. And I hope y'all learned something today. And I hope to see y'all here tomorrow for another day, another LeetCode problem. See y'all then.